Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this week's Grip live stream with me, your host, Jason Osborne. And this week, we're going to be discussing that omnipresent topic, AI, and its effect on the workforce, more specifically, or its potential effect, because obviously a lot of this remains unknown. Happy to be back with you this Wednesday. And as ever, I invite comments from across the different platforms that we're coming to you, that being YouTube, X, Facebook, Instagram, possibly. I don't know. But I'm inviting comments all the same because I would hope this week to get your thoughts on whether you've been using AI, if you have been using it, what for, whether it has sort of moved into your workplace, whether it's expected of you. Really, if you have any sort of experience, I suppose, of AI encroaching on your area of expertise, to put it that way, I'd be very interested in hearing from you, as I'm sure would the other commenters. We've already got a comment straight in, and I'm going to try and do this as ever throughout. End of the line, Joel. Artificial intelligence is already running our country since our TDs are brainless automatons. Um, Far be it from me to say it on the stream, but I'm sure there are many people who probably agree with that assessment. But yeah, what prompted my desire to discuss this topic this week was I woke up this morning and I had in mind to discuss something else, but no joke, I went on social media, onto X more specifically, and every single post for the first couple seconds of scrolling were people responding to this mega viral article on the topic of AI. And as you know, on the Grip live stream, we love a mega viral article, generally because they're addressing topics that the rest of the media are fairly slow to touch, like the effect of more women in the workplace, as was the case of the Great Feminization article we discussed, as was the case with that Lost Generation article, which was all about sort of strategic bias against young white men and institutional bias, I should say, sorry, against young white men. So this one isn't as contentious, but I would like to think it's no less up in the air, as it were, and it's still worth discussing because I'm personally fascinated by AI, and I'm sure a lot of you probably will be as well. Not so much in terms of using it, but more so in terms of the effect that it's having on the workforce and indeed on the way people interact with each other more fundamentally. So I suppose without further ado, and as I say, just invite your comments from across the different platforms, especially as I said, containing your experiences of AI, if indeed you've had any thus far. Not so much what you spoke about with ChatGPT this morning, as whether it's being implemented in your workplace, whether you've lost a job because of it, whether anyone you know has lost a job because of it. I'd be very interested in hearing that throughout. But of course, it's early days. Maybe the case that no one has experienced any of these things yet. Indeed, hopefully not. So I'm sure if you were on X at all today, as many of you probably were, you saw this article doing the rounds, memorably titled "Something Big is Happening." That's obviously laden with sarcasm. As a side note, I've been generally staying away from X articles because they bang of being written by AI in the first place, many of them. But it's also just generally the case that they're not on particularly interesting topics. So, nevertheless, that's why I decided to discuss this today. So, this was written by, because I think this is an important piece of context, and this definitely shapes my perception of this, as I say, mega viral article, because that is indeed what it is. I mean, it got 45 million views, which is as I said on a previous episode, for a writer, that's an unprecedented audience size. I doubt whether everything I write will ever be viewed by 45 million people. Obviously, it doesn't mean 45 million people read the article, but certainly that it reached that many eyeballs is something. But this was written by Matt Schumer, who's CEO at Hyperwrite AI, Other Side AI, and he just seems to be an all-round AI guy, which, you know, take from that what you will once you hear what he has to say, because I don't think you can exactly categorize him as a disinterested party. So he started off by making the case that people should cast their minds back to February 2020, which obviously most of us will remember as being just before the outbreak of the pandemic, or as Grip Read has been more likely to remember it, the onset of the pandemic restrictions more so. But anyway, he says that he sort of outlined what a crazy time that was, and he said it seems that we're in the sort of like this seems overblown phase of something much, much bigger than COVID, because he's making the case that a lot of people didn't take COVID seriously and they were proven wrong over the next couple of years when indeed it was all that sort of seemed to matter in the world for the next while. But he thinks that we're on the cusp of something much, much bigger than COVID. So his experience, he says he's spent 6 years building an AI startup and investing in the space. He does seem to be someone who has a lot of experience in the area. He's done a lot of work with it, a lot of coding, a lot of app building. But he said that it should be noted straight off the bat that he's someone that has no influence over the shape of the industry, and he attributes the influence to a handful of people at obviously a small number of companies that we're all familiar with at this stage: OpenAI, Anthropic, Google DeepMind, and a few others, which obviously notably are mostly based on the west coast of the US. So that in and of itself is interesting. But he spoke about how uh, he is competent to talk about the sort of earth-shaking effect AI is going to have because it affected him first in his sort of tech space. So he spoke about how for years AI was sort of steadily improving, as we've all seen. I mean, who among us internet users doesn't remember the videos of Will Smith eating spaghetti, absolute nightmare stuff. Whereas now I saw a video just today and it's all very smooth. So indeed it's coming on leaps and bounds. But he said anyway, where this is pertinent to the job space, was the release two major AI labs, that being OpenAI, which is behind ChatGPT, and Opus 4.6 from Anthropic, which are most famously the makers of Claude, one of the main competitors to ChatGPT. And he said that this was a game changer in his opinion. It shifted from having to sort of talk the as we might even get into this evening, I'm very reluctant to use the phrase AI because I don't. I mean, artificial, I suppose, covers the fact that it's not real intelligence. But I think even that is probably an overly powerful way to phrase it. But anyway, he said that he's no longer needed. His sort of gut punchline was that he's no longer needed for the actual technical work of his job, whereas previously he would have had to walk the AI through every step of the work that he wanted to do, whether that was building an app or whatever it was. Now he gives it a sort of precise set of commands. Not only will it build the app itself, and according to him, build it fairly flawlessly using these latest models. It'll test it itself. It'll use the app as a front end user would, and then it'll only offer it to him once it's ready and good to go. And he said when he tests it, it's typically perfect. So he is quite blown away by it. He was of the opinion that this is because AI labs made a very deliberate choice in their sort of design of the latest models, which is that they focused on making AI great at writing code first. And I've been hearing this obviously for years. This is what a lot of the focus has been on in terms of AI models, is getting them to write good code. But the key now is that these AIs are involved in writing their own code. I think it was the case that that latest Anthropic model was largely done using itself. So it's clearly sort of starting to self-replicate, I suppose, to put it that way. And he said that that's going to be the pattern going forward, that obviously it'll be able to keep improving itself. And the thing is, this isn't going to be limited, I suppose, was his contention, to tech. It's just people in tech are seeing it first. This line does a lot of heavy lifting, in my opinion. He said it's an experience everyone else is about to have: law, finance, medicine, accounting, consulting, writing, design, analysis, customer service. Um, and he says the predictions are not in 10 years, within 1 to 5 years, which is sort of the timeline being given by a lot of these Silicon Valley bigwigs, I guess. So he is essentially sending a dispatch from the front lines of the AI world. As I say, it made huge waves because he's someone with a lot of experience of AI. He speaks about the sort of quantum leaps in his experience. In 2022, he says AI couldn't do basic arithmetic reliably. By 2023, though, it could pass the bar exam over in the US. By 2024, it could write working software and explain graduate level science. by late 2025, some of the best engineers in the world had handed over most of their coding work to AI, which also corroborates what I've heard from people working in tech. But he said that, yeah, with the release of these latest models, it sort of makes everything feel like a different era altogether. So his basic argument to condense his 20,000 word or 20,000 character essay to its fundamentals is that AI advances are exponential, and while tech people are the first to be affected by this, it is going to affect everyone eventually, because in his experience consulting with people in other industries using AI, they do see experts, say in law, experts in finance, in different areas, sort of coming to grips with AI because they find that it's quite good at doing what they have to do, and they assume it's going to get better. So they're trying to accommodate themselves to that new reality. So I suppose, what you should do, his takeaway brief from it. And this is where I find it kind of hard to separate the article, which had such a big impact on the discourse today, from who he is. He says, start using AI seriously and not just as a search engine, which obviously means signing up for these premium models of what OpenAI is offering, what Claude is offering, what any given platform is offering. He also puts in a pitch for himself. You know, if you want to stay current on which model is best, which, based on his analysis of things, is absolutely essential if you want to sort of keep your job and remain competitive. You can follow him on X at Matt Schumer. So a sort of shameless plug in there. He makes the case that you need to figure out what in your line of work is sort of what will take longest for AI to displace. He obviously identifies, probably correctly so, relationships and trust, so that interpersonal element, work that requires physical presence, roles with what did he say, licensed responsibility or accountability. So, you know, roles where someone has to sign off, someone who I suppose could ultimately end up standing in a courtroom, I think was how he put it. Those are things that will obviously take much longer for, indeed, regulatory workarounds even. So he essentially is making the case that we're on the cusp of a quantum leap in terms of work, and that if you're wise, you'll get your house in order now. It was straight off the bat, even before we get into the effect AI is having on the job market. I think the only two ridiculous positions in relation to AI are, one, that it's going to have no effect whatsoever, and two, that it's going to change everything. I'm very skeptical that it's going to change everything. I mean, you know, the internet was a pretty big bloody phenomenon. That didn't change everything. Indeed, that sort of just accelerated and amplified a lot of what we already were and what we were engaging in. And I think AI is going to be much the same. But I mean, I can focus on my own industry. Replacing journalists, replacing journalism. There's a lot of writing, say, that AI absolutely will be able to produce competently. I'm thinking particularly the sort of updates that Bloomberg might put out, you know, articles about market movements, articles about sort of pure diplomacy and things like that, international political developments. A lot of the sort of wires that would come out from newswire services. There's no reason, I suppose, why AI couldn't do all of that and do that perfectly competently. And given that it's just pure news with no commentary, I don't think anyone would have any issue in particular reading this content from AI. I find it very hard to believe that people who care about reading, people who care about writing, will be happy for um, a heavy AI presence in this industry. You're already seeing that with a lot of publications already have in place a sort of policy that they will not accept AI submissions. I read an article by an editor just late last week, in which he was essentially making the plug: stop sending us your AI articles, stop sending us your articles that are written entirely by AI, stop sending us your articles that are largely written by AI. He didn't say this, but largely the reason for this is because they're less interesting. People don't care what AI has to say, and it also sort of, as I said, bangs of sort of artificiality. So I do think that there's some industries, journalism and writing possibly foremost among them, although, as I say, not every kind of writing. I think technical writing is very much at risk. I think that content writing, marketing, all of these kinds of things, sort of pure news writing in which you don't really need a particularly human take on it. Those are all the kinds of things I can absolutely see being taken on comfortably by AI, and companies, large news companies, being fairly happy to do it because it'll cost them less. I have a comment coming in from John Kirk here. With the leap in AI, where is the extra power from the already taxed power? I presume that's taxed power grid going to come from? Moore's law is also applicable when it comes to AI's exponential growth. I mean, yeah, the physical constraints are also an issue. I think that a whole issue with the AI, I'm gonna say AI bubble. I mean, that's sort of presupposing that it is a bubble, but a whole issue with the AI area is that it kind of a lot of the enthusiasts speak about it as though it's happening in a bubble, as though, even better, even happening in a vacuum, to put it that way. Whereas there's obviously a whole load happening in the sidelines, like growing discontent about the amount of water, say, the data centers use. And that's not a debate I would be quick to overlook, because I think that it is a genuinely astronomical amount of water that these facilities are requiring. And I think there's as that grows, there's potential for massive pushback there in the future. But there's obviously a whole load of areas in which there's potential for pushback. I mean, copyright, privacy laws. I mean, we're seeing it with AI generated imagery and things like that. It's not happening in a vacuum, and the world being as dynamic as it is, there's just no guarantee that this stuff is going to keep proceeding smoothly, if indeed it has proceeded smoothly to this point. So anyway, that was the general thrust of this article that, as I say, did genuinely light up at least X today. And as I say, I find myself in between those two positions, which is that, I don't think AI is changing nothing, but I also don't think it's changing everything as people are inclined to think it will. Um, my reasons for that obviously being that I think we have a sort of primarily a spiritual crisis that can't be solved by a sort of material change, like better artificial intelligence or anything of that nature. But that's neither here nor there. What we wanted to discuss this evening was the impact on jobs. Um, so as we like to do on the live stream, like to plug our own articles sometimes, because I say this even aside from the fact that I work at Grip. There's a lot of good content there. My colleague Matt Tracy wrote a really interesting article a couple of weeks back, in which was headlined "Stats already showing an how did you put it? Oh, there it is. Stats already showing AI effect on jobs." So he was making the case that um, sort of the rosy picture we're painting in Ireland, obviously, he sort of honed in on our own situation. The rosy picture we're painting in terms of like all of the jobs that are there for tech graduates, for people just starting off in the tech industry, doesn't really match up with the statistics and indeed the utterances of people in business. So he spoke about in the forward to the national strategy paper on AI. Minister Dara Cleary, then in the Department of Enterprise, when it was written, noted that we've a strong pipeline of tech talent from all regions and all universities across Ireland. Now, he went on to say that that line contrasts with the alarming fact that at the third quarter of last year, unemployment among 15 to 24-year-olds was 14.1%, which was up from 11.5% in the same period. He said the unemployment rate here is now close to the EU average of 14.8%. And so he was saying, while official reports stress the opportunities for sort of wage increases, productivity gains, and the attraction of Ireland for people with AI skills, um, there's considerably less coverage, I suppose, to sort of the fact that there are a load of jobs that are open season, I suppose, for AI replacement, and that this will particularly impact on sort of administrative, customer service type jobs, but also sort of entry level tech jobs. he highlighted, I hadn't caught this, which I thought was really interesting, a Sunday Business Post piece from November 22nd last year, which referred to plans by leading companies like KPMG, Ernst Young, and Deloitte to significantly reduce their intake of graduates with an estimate of a 29% cut. He said that those cuts are also reflected in the number of work permits that have been issued to those companies. There was nearly a 50% fall on the same period the year before, which is clearly notable. So that Business Post article quoted Julie Sweet of Accenture, who warned that tech workers would have to, quote, get up to speed or face being, quote, exited, which is the sort of compassionate language you expect of the sort of compassionate language you expect from the tech industry, as we'll be getting into as well. He was saying that, so this is Matt again, he was saying the connection between the greater use of AI and the loss of jobs is starkly indicated in the case of Microsoft. As part of its celebration of having been in Ireland since 1985, the company announced a further 4 million investment in its Dream Space AI upskilling program. That being that last July it announced, that being despite the fact that last July it announced plans for 9,000 job losses across its global operations, many of which are presumably connected to sort of AI related developments. Microsoft did notify the Department of Enterprise on that occasion that it would include its operation in Ireland. So there's another concrete impact, I suppose, of AI. Matt went through the numbers. I won't get into all of them here because I want to move on a little bit, but he went through the numbers of sort of work permits issued to companies in information and communications compared with the year before, and they are falling, which again sort of indicates the direction which the trend is moving. I thought a very interesting development, to skip from one of Matt's articles, which I would encourage everyone to go and read in full. It's very interesting. To one of my own articles, which I wrote last week, in which I was encouraged to write it by OpenAI. So again, to go back to OpenAI's announcement of Frontier, which is a new platform they're offering that helps enterprises to build, deploy, and manage AI agents that can do real work. So yeah, in keeping with that sort of compassionate language we heard in the last article about employees having to get up to speed or face being exited, um, this just smacks of what AI is being used for, I suppose, in workplaces, which is essentially work that the lower skilled workers in companies would otherwise do. I think you saw that movement initially from obviously the very highly paid employees in Western companies, in Western countries, I should say, that companies gradually sort of laid off and they shifted to hiring employees, say in India and other cheap Poland, indeed, which has lower wages, places like this. Because it was cheaper, obviously, to employ them to do the same work. But I think you're going to see in the future, quite probably, these AI agents being filled in to do those to do those jobs, like basic, um, basic developing. Certainly, call center and customer service jobs that are so prevalent in countries like India. Um, but what I thought was really interesting was that in its announcement about Frontier, um, OpenAI cited a number of companies as early adopters, which is HP, Intuit, and Uber. And I had a look at all of those companies, and within recent months, all of them have announced that they have laid off staff as a result of AI adoption strategies, or they plan to cut further jobs as a result of AI adoption strategies. So again, to go back to that initial article, a lot of this is related to the tech sector currently. The tech sector and kind of lower skilled tech jobs. I don't say that obviously insultingly. I mean, it's just the reality, like say working in call centers and things of that nature. Um, but that article was also making the case that it won't be limited to these things. The reason it's sort of particularly sort of disproportionately impacting these areas is obviously because these things are being developed by tech workers. And so that's sort of what it's best at initially, but as it sort of gains the ability to improve exponentially, it'll get better at writing, it'll get better at digesting legal briefs and offering analysis and things like that. So it's going to become a much more widespread phenomenon, was his case. But anyway, I think that it will have an impact is clear. Goldman Sachs was saying that AI is coming for the jobs markets this year. They said this year is going to be a bit of a linchpin year. AI's impact on jobs set to become more pronounced was another analyst's take on this. So that it's going to have an effect is clear. I'm not necessarily sure it's going to be the sort of silver bullet, I suppose, that a lot of tech visionaries are hoping that it will be. This combines interestingly, in my opinion anyway, with robotics. We got some interesting updates on that front recently from Elon Musk, who was speaking at the World Economic Forum. He had a couple of, I thought, sort of horrendously anti-human utterances at the World Economic Forum. I don't know what it is about that place that kind of brings that side out of everyone, but he was speaking about robotics because Tesla, Elon Musk is certainly going all in on robotics. Tesla announced recently they were cutting two of their admittedly limited offering of cars. I mean, they don't have too many models. They announced that they were cutting two of their car models, the Model 3, I think, and the Model Y, one of which is their one of their two family models. The reason they're cutting that is because they want to shift Tesla production to robotics. I'm sure many of you will have seen online that Tesla's apparently producing the Optimus robotics model. Whenever I've seen that, it looks remarkably like a person in a suit, and I'm not saying that in praise of Optimus. I'm saying that it seems like a massive joke to me personally. Um, we've got people coming in sort of thick and fast here. My apologies, I haven't been paying too much attention to the comments. Aaron Core on Facebook saying, I'm in the delivery game. Unless AI has a driving license and the physical ability to get the packet to customer, I'm pretty safe. I retire in 4 years. Well, yeah, if you retire in 4 years, that's pretty safe bet that you'd be okay. It is funny, AI won't need a driving license. You've already got sort of over in San Francisco, you've got their Waymos and all of their different FSD cars, fully self-driving vehicles that are sort of capable of ferrying people to and from, presumably of making deliveries, although I'm not particularly familiar with that. So I certainly think that probably is on the horizon. I think the Tesla technology is pretty reliable at this stage, which is quite depressing because obviously that will be one area in which jobs may very well be impacted. But again, speak about all of this stuff is in a vacuum. All of these technologies are predicated on an extraordinarily stable civilization, on an extraordinarily stable supply of electricity and energy. And all of these things are anything but guaranteed, as we constantly see. If anything, it feels like things are destabilizing and getting less certain. I certainly wouldn't like to be relying on a sort of fully electric car with the in Ireland with the sort of intermittency of electricity supply these days. So certainly these things don't happen in a vacuum, as I think a lot of these people who are very bullish on these technologies sort of try to make it appear is the case. Andy O'Connor coming in from YouTube. If TDs are suggesting stupid and outlandish things like nationalizing massive social media companies, then we won't attract much US tech. Legal industry will start cutting trainee numbers soon. Yeah, our tech future obviously remains to be seen, as the comments he's referring to obviously coming from one of those Oireachtas committees. I can't remember which one recently, but I think it was Sinead Gibney who's essentially saying that the SOC Dems, Sinead Gibney essentially saying that we should be nationalizing X, which for more reasons than we can state here is an absolute joke. End of the line, Joel. In a way, it's a fool's errand to chase the next tech. We might be better off doing evergreen jobs like plumbing and car mechanics. Well, indeed. I mean, I think those techie sorts who I think are particularly detached from reality seem to think that those jobs will, maybe they're right. Who might say that they're wrong? But they seem to think that those jobs will eventually be replaced by a combination of artificial intelligence, robotics. But that seems to me to be 100 million years off based on the sort of current state of robotics and what would be required. Uh, Maybe pertinent to this field, I know Jordan Peterson gets a lot of not slack, he gets a lot of stick these days, I should say, because of the way he was conducting himself on social media before his break, which was admittedly quite funny. But he did have a couple of very insightful bangers, it must be said. One of which was, it's probably not original to him, but he did have sort of popularized the insight that that intelligence. Oh, I should take down the comment there. It's staying on the screen for a long time. Intelligence is human intelligence is an embodied thing. It's all well and good for us to have sort of the massively computationally powerful, latest chat GPT and Anthropic models, that OpenAI and Anthropic models, I should say. But and then all very well and good for, say, Tesla's Optimus to be very sort of dexterous and whatnot. But the idea that that results in all of these things combining to be able to work in the world as indeed humans are so effortlessly is a massive leap. And we don't really currently, I mean, so it's the closest thing we do have to anything like that are the self-driving Teslas and the Waymos, but that's obviously a world apart from a human doing a complex job like plumbing or, yeah, car mechanics, as we said. Um, I think that it's an extraordinarily up in the air area, for want of a better way of putting it. And I think that the only people that you can sort of safely discount in all of this are those who are speaking with absolute certainty as to how it's all going to turn out. I would encourage you all, just out of your own interest, if you're interested in the topic, to go and have a look for that article today. As I say, it was written by what was his name? Matt Schumer on X. I would encourage you to go and have a look at it, because I mean it is interesting, and as I say, you see nearly 50 million times in a day, absolutely massive. Um, I was reminded, a kind of humorous note, speaking about job replacement. Sam Altman, who's obviously CEO of OpenAI, boasting recently about it wasn't recently, it was last year, and obviously these things develop very quickly, so maybe it's better since then. But he was commenting on how much better AI is getting at creative writing, and he shared the prompt and the result from something they'd given to their then latest model. The prompt being, please write a metafictional literary short story about AI and grief. Um, I'll read a select paragraph to you because it just, oh gosh, looking at it, it's just so cringe. I don't know how else to put it. The result, what it gave back was, before we go any further, I should admit this comes with instructions. Be metafictional, be literary, be about AI and grief, and above all, be original. Already you can hear the constraints humming like a server farm at midnight. M dash, anonymous, regimented, powered by someone else's need. I have to begin somewhere, so I'll begin with a blinking cursor, which for me is just a placeholder and a buffer, and for you is the small anxious pulse of a heart at rest. I'm not going to read anymore. I don't think AI is going to be cracking creative writing anytime soon, and I think even if it did, who cares what AI creates? Uh, maybe that's my own opinion. I personally just really could not care less. I'm interested in writing because I'm interested in what other people have to say and how they experience the world. And indeed, AI doesn't experience the world. So I think creative writers, the people who are getting the full-time basic arts income as of this week, I think, or whenever they're launching it from the government, are probably is probably safe for the time being. But suffice it to say, it's an incredibly dynamic area. There are already jobs being lost, as we've outlined over the course of this evening. And that trend does appear to be increasing in the sort of tech and, again, I don't like putting it this way, but it's the kind of low skilled work, sort of call center work. Gareth Ronan, I hope I'm saying that properly, because sometimes with these names it's hard to split them up properly. The hype about AI is Y2K all over again. The AI talk we're being sold today will take another 25 years to get anywhere near the spill. I'm not sure the last part, the spill they're telling us today. I mean, I agree. I think it's completely overblown from a lot of quarters, but I also think that it's probably not nothing. It probably falls somewhere in the middle. And indeed, there's a lot of people who speak about it with very apocalyptic tones. I mean, people, as you say, people spoke the same way about the internet and about sort of they have at every stage of industrialization. And you can make a very easy case that these things have had absolutely disastrous effects in various ways, but we're still here. And for the most part, most of us are still working. So it is just the case that they sort of change the setting and change the stage a little bit. Searshan and I think it might be a misspelling in there. And Aaron, entry level jobs are being decimated. Um, yeah, well, that was kind of the case Matt was making in his article, which is that yeah, entry level jobs are being disproportionately affected by this stuff, and that will, I'm sure, only intensify over the next little while. But it remains to be seen. It'll be very interesting. One to watch will be whether there are industries that put up, as I say, safeguards. It does appear at the moment that journalism is one of them, in that editors are quickly sort of proving allergic to pieces that are either smack of being written by AI, or even indeed largely being written by AI, or having been guided by AI. I know that I know that uh yeah, it's proving quite difficult, I suppose, for people to submit pieces written by AI, because as well a lot of the detectors, which are also operated using AI, are very good at this stage and very good at indicating when AI is present in a written piece. So anyway, we've got a stream full of musings this evening, and indeed it couldn't really be any other way. As I said, I think the people who have concrete answers on all of this stuff are trying to sell you something, as may well be the case with that article, but I won't impute motive to them that I don't have any evidence of. So we'll leave it there for the moment. I think that it's obviously something to keep an eye on. Certainly something I'll be keeping an eye on, because I'm very interested in it. And obviously, Matt, I keep forgetting his bloody name, Matt Sherman or whatever his name was of the opinion that if your job is in any way connected to a screen, you're going to be in trouble over the next couple of years. So if I if I'm if that is the case, I'm certainly in the firing line, and so you can follow me for your latest updates as to whether people working at screens are going to be losing their jobs. But without further ado, we'll leave it there for this evening. Thought we'd just do a fairly short one, 40 minutes, nice and streamlined. As ever, I invite your feedback to my email, jason@grip.ie. It's been great corresponding with a lot of people from these, and I'm very keen to hear if there are topics people would like me to cover, if there's any sort of criticism or feedback or thoughts that came off the stream this evening. Always happy to hear all of them, and I'll get back to as many as possible. If you have any suggestions, as I say, for topics, feel free to fire them over to me. As I said, jason@grip.ie. But other than that, we'll see you again next Wednesday. 7 p.m. is the new time for the next iteration of the Grip live stream. So thank you all for joining me this evening, and we'll leave it there. God bless.